Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Public expression time. I have no card, but you can go ahead anyway.
Usually I never fill one out. You should know that by now. How you doing tonight, Jack? Good? Okay. Anyway, I'll be kind to you tonight. I'll tell you a different story. This one's about one of your in-house pipe inspectors. He's retired now. And this is just another example of why we pay so much for our water here at MMWD. Now, anytime MMWD is replacing pipes, you use the lowest bidding independent contractor. It's not done in-house. So to make sure that the pipes are being installed properly by these contractors, you use your in-house pipe inspectors. Their job is to make sure that the proper pipe is installed, where it is located, what fittings are used, and how deep it is. This information is on the completed project drawings and saves time for anyone that needs to work on this underground equipment after it is installed. Now, one of these pipe inspectors that you had would frequently lose his notes, that all this information is lost forever. I have a feeling they didn't really lose them. He just never did the work. It would be bad enough that this would happen once, but the same person would constantly lose his notes several times on different jobs. This kind of behavior should never be tolerated, but at MMWD, it seems that mediocrity is rewarded while you crush innovation. Now, some of the projects that this worker blew off included several miles of the Panoramic Highway in Mill Valley, Concrete Pipe Road in Fairfax, and the Redwood Drive Tank in Woodacre, among many others. Now, this is something that ratepayers will always be paying for every year since there are no records available on these projects. This makes the job of your pipe locators that much more difficult and dangerous, especially on a road with lots of blind corners and high-speed traffic. This will be a problem for decades because this job was not done right. We'll all have to pay for it. Now, the Redwood Drive tank is down the street from my home. The project number was closed long ago, so I went out there on my own time to make sure that the construction drawings were correct. They weren't. The power supply for the pumps came from a different junction pole, and none of the storm drains were in the right locations, nor were the water pipes. This is unacceptable. I updated the drawings to the best of my ability using pipe locating equipment. So I just want to say that your bureaucratic management team was well aware of this employee's poor work habits, yet they still allowed him to continue to blow off his projects. And when this employee retired, you brought him back to train your current senior pipe inspector. So I just hope that he's not teaching him the same tricks that he learned. Anyway, I hope you will look into this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other public comment? Okay, hearing none. Director's announcements, Larry, I guess, Ben, I'll start with you. Director's announcements and general manager's announcements.
I have none tonight, Jack.
Okay.
None.
None.
I did the broom pull with Suzanne Whalen Saturday. So that was pretty good event. We had about maybe 50 people from the community out at Sky Ranch pulling broom. And we also got a lecture on the Humboldt wood rat, which is actually quite an impressive little creature. So
Sounds like an invasive species down
no, it's a native. Actually.
Dusky-footed.
here. How do you get from Humboldt?
I'm not sure, but it's kind of a key species. But anyway, it was a good event, well done, and so it was good to be there and represent.
Okay, thank you.
Does he
I
eat
have,
wood? Does he eat wood?
The wood, no, they're
I have
very.
one announcement myself. Thank you very much.
Sorry.
At our last North Bay Watershed Association meeting, Ben did a presentation on lessons learned from his experience in the Sonoma fire, and it was unbelievably good. So I'm hoping that, and I've asked him if he can set that up so that he can make that same presentation to the board and us down here. It's absolutely worthwhile. So,
Good idea.
thank you. Okay, and I guess one last thing on North Bay Watershed Association also. On April 3rd, Friday, April 3rd, we're going to have our biennial conference. So mark that on your calendar. It's an event you don't want to miss. Okay.
The Sheraton, right?
Pardon me?
At the Sheraton.
Yeah, yes, good catch there. Petaluma Sheraton, once again. That's where we did it last year, and actually we've done it there a number of times.
Jack, if it works for you, I was thinking I may try and do it at a dock or something like that, because that would give some staff the opportunity to sit in.
Sure.
That may be useful.
Excellent idea.
Good.
Yeah, excellent idea.
Or both.
Yeah, yeah. You've done it a few times, you indicated.
have.
Yeah, and it shows. It shows, by the way. It was very well done. Okay, can I get a motion to approve the consent calendar?
So moved.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, regular calendar. Item number 3, update on the Tier 4 rate variance criteria.
Good evening, Carrie Pollard, Water Efficiency Manager, and I have item number 3, Resolution 8549, updating the Tier 4 rate variance criteria. So back in 2003, when the district established Tier 4 for rates for residential accounts, they brought a subsequent resolution that created a program allowing an exemption program, an opportunity to exempt out of Tier 4 rates if residential customers met extensive water efficiency criteria, water conservation measures and criteria. So since 2003, the criteria has not been updated, and you can imagine in the last 17 years there's been a number of advancements in water efficiency hardware and widgets. And so this item is updating the criteria that would allow for customers to continue to participate in that program and continue to maximize the efficiency that the district is obtaining by having this program in place. So looking at your item, there's a couple of tables that walk you through the specific changes. Interior fixtures, we've updated all of the indoor hardware requirements that either meet or exceed state standards. They also align with other district code and also align with our incentive programs. So of course, that's toilets, shower heads, faucet aerators, and clothes washers. Flipping the page, residential and irrigation changes. There's only 4 specific changes there. Again, they all align with either state requirements or our current code, especially for new connections. For example, the landscape requirements that we require isolation valves and water budgets. I will also, it's a good opportunity to point out that this is not the extent, this table is not the extent of the criteria. And a couple other pages ahead, you'll see the full extent. For example, rain sensors are already required. Those are remaining, so I didn't call them out. The others would be, my rain sensors is the best example. So, and then swimming pool covers was previously required in 2003. It's actually said it was provided. So rest assured, we were not providing pool covers to Tier 4 exemption customers. We were assuming that they were being maintained and utilized, and so we've just clarified that language.
Yeah.
One additional change is customer notification. So we want to make sure that customers, that we have accurate documentation that demonstrates customers were notified of their need to renew this program. Historically, there's been a 2-year renewal requirement. We're changing that. The proposal is to change it to 4 years, just to allow staff a little bit more time to walk folks through that process. And hardware changes don't happen that quickly, and so it just seems to make a lot of sense. And so with that, we're requesting approval to 8549, Resolution 8549, updating the Tier 4 variance criteria. And I'll turn it back over to the President if there's any questions.
Any questions?
I have a question. So you audit all of the folks who apply for this? Do you go out and take
We
a
do.
walk through?
Yep, we actually go out and confirm and verify that they've made all of the necessary improvements.
Makes sense.
My friends who have had it done were very pleased with the way it went. They're particularly pleased with never having to be in Tier 4, only being in Tier 3. That's a big benefit. But, yeah, I think it's a great program. How many are there?
Sure. There's currently 45 participants in the program.
And
We have 1,000 Tier 4s, right? Isn't that the number I remember? Something like that.
I don't recall the
There's a-
total
there's
number
a-
of
it's in the
customers
board
in
packet.
Tier 4.
So maybe we should press them a little more?
I think that there could be an opportunity there. I would ideally like to work through the 45 customers we currently have in the program and make sure that they are updated to the current criteria before we move on and start, actively advertising, just to minimize impacts on staff. But I think that, potentially there is an opportunity.
And I also wanted to point out that demand analysis has shown that there was a reduction in these customers' water use after following the criteria. Yeah.
Sure. Oh, no question. Like I say, my friends that have had it done were very pleased with the results. I don't see that graph in this packet. I don't know why. We used to have the thing with the bar graphs, showed each by tier, how much water usage. It was always in the packet.
Oh.
It
In the monthly report.
doesn't seem to be here, but anyway, because what I recall is it's either 600 or 1,000. So I think we should, recommendation would be to do both. Let's keep our 45, but 45 out of 1,000 is, we need to do a little better. And I think, I'm sure most of them basically don't really think about it. So you've probably heard my story about that when I decided to run for office, when I'm sitting with my friends playing poker and I ask, how much is your water bill? $1,800. How much your water bill? $2,400. How much your water bill? The guy's house, $3,600, right? And I said, doesn't that bother you? And he says, well, it's in my wife's budget. Okay.
So I had a question about whether we could include requiring gray water systems, which are required now in new construction, and it just seems that would really have an impact. At least doing laundry to landscape as a requirement.
It's a good idea.
So I don't think we should require that they do full gray water with any active
Sure.
pumping, but laundry to landscape, passive gray water system requirement, I think would be quite reasonable. The valves are
Yep.
probably under
Absolutely.
$100.
Especially considering we require it for other customers.
Under 100.
Under 100.
It's one main valve. You just
But we could offer them a tier 2. Okay, so there is an incentive. You could say, instead of going, if you want to go the whole bore, you could be never above tier 2.
Now, that would broaden the program, because probably you would have to offer that to all Tier 3 customers as well, right? And I think this is a thoughtful program. I do think it could be viewed by some that we're allowing the heaviest. There's tension between the theory of a Tier 4 rate, which is right to provide a disincentive of using that much water, and this program. I think it works for us. I think we'd want to maybe move forward with what's suggested tonight, maybe with the gray water addition, before we think too much about expanding it and how it works with the overall intent of the rate structure itself.
But I'm thinking, if we want that, I mean, there's enough incentive there for these kind of level of water users to do it.
But something that Carrie said, though, that sort of got lost for a second there, is that we require other customers to have gray water systems, right?
New connections and
No, I understand that.
new connections.
No, I understand that.
Yeah.
But I just think that, but the other thing to think about is that it actually does result, especially gray water, does result in a reduction of water usage.
Sure.
Yeah, and I mean, a passive system is it's a one day job.
Oh, no, I know.
I mean, it's an
I know.
easy thing to do. So
But my
this
point
might
is,
fit into, this is somewhat of a modest program, so I'm just thinking, to me, the gray water thing is getting people to even be aware of it.
Sure.
So I think adding it just,
Is this something we would want to ask staff to look into and come back with a,
yeah, I mean, I think you should consider it. I mean,
well, I
it's
think
like you're.
we could put it in the resolution. We could just ask that,
it's what I'm asking, actually.
yeah.
What we could do is, we could have the motion to put it in with a proviso as staff looks at it, just confirm there's nothing, because we hadn't anticipated that we'd want to bring it back, with the potential to bring it back, but otherwise to proceed forward with it in line with the resolution.
And
Well,
I think
especially
you have to add where practicable. I mean, I've dealt with some customer, you really have to know your terrain, you have to have the slope, so not everybody can do it,
Right.
so.
Doesn't the state still require all those discharges to be subsurface?
Yes.
Yeah, so I don't know that it's so quick to do that legally.
It's pretty easy. I did it.
Subsurface? Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Because, well, it depends on the soil there.
It's
Yeah,
2
I
inches.
mean, it depends
so
on
it's
where your
reasonable.
house is located and the slope from the washing machine, but,
And you
it's,
can't
it's
have
pretty
runoff
easy.
over
It's like 1
sidewalks.
foot for every 10 feet of run or something. It's pretty, or even 20 feet. It's
Yeah.
pretty modest.
Well, those are the sorts of things we would be looking at, yeah.
So, subject to you're looking into
Will
it.
of the board.
Yeah, and I do think the addition of where practical does give some space for staff to review that particular issue. Aside from the others, it would be mandates. So it probably does give enough room. But I think understanding that we would look into it and proceed,
Right.
or if we found
Right.
difficulty, we'd bring it back.
But there's existing language with regards to the requirement for people to include it in their house, so it's just a matter of taking that language and putting it in here, right? we have-
Yeah, our statutory language doesn't really have the practicable part.
It actually does.
Oh, does it?
includes-
Okay, well then it should
So,
be good.
you know what I would say then? I would move approval of Resolution 8549, updating the Tier 4 rate variance criteria, including the language that we currently have for gray
Sure.
water.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure.
That's-
I would just maybe limit it to laundry to landscape as opposed to other fixtures.
Or if you want, we could pass this the way it is and bring it back, if you'd like to have a little more time to think about it.
Well, we're giving time to think about it under Ben's proposal. If they think about it and it's okay, they go forward. They don't have to bring it back for approval.
Right, but I think the typos or the misstatements are worth correcting here.
That's a different issue.
You know, like provided, I think those are good words to get out.
Oh, provide in full cover?
Well, it's
Those are
okay.
corrected.
It means,
Those are
you
part of
know,
the corrections.
it's included, it's
Yeah, no, I
expected,
understand.
but it's just a bad choice of words.
Right,
And you fix that. I think that kind of stuff we should clean up.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's ordinance 429. I tried to find it on our website, couldn't, but it's definitely, we passed it, so
I
it's.
have a copy.
you got
Yes,
it,
I'm
okay.
familiar with it.
Okay, excellent.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead, Ben, you were gonna say?
So just, I would recommend, and I understand the comment of moving forward with the amendment as stated, with the understanding that staff will proceed along the course, but if we do find a hiccup in, as we review it and think about it, we would bring it back before we implement it.
Yep. Okay, can I get a motion?
Well, I got one more. I think we should give some serious thought to having some workshops on the gray water stuff, where the actual implementation, you know, to have the vendors there and say, people, you know, this costs $5,000 or this costs $25,000, whatever they are.
Or you can do it yourself.
Well, not those fancy ones with the treatment and all that, but, you know, well, you could, but they're still $5,000. So I think, you know, have a chance for people to touch these things, because especially if they realize there was enough incentive to drive them forward. It'd
So-
be very interesting.
On gray water, just briefly, Carrie and Crystal's oversight are looking into developing a broader gray water initiative, a gray water program, to really look at that as one of the number of things Carrie is looking at in terms of advancing the water recycling, conservation, the water use efficiency program that we have here. So you're going to be hearing, I think, going forward quite a bit about a gray water program, perhaps modeled after, you may have seen San Francisco's building gray water program, looking at that on a residential scale and moving that kind of in a more aggressive posture for this community, but in a thoughtful, studied way. So there'll be more coming on that. Along the lines of what you were saying.
Cool.
So is there a motion?
Problem is, we got several. Give me the motion again,
I'd move approval with the amendment to add gray water.
okay? Second,
I'll second.
okay?
Just for clarity, on the addition of gray water, is that where is practical?
Where practical.
Okay.
Okay, any comments?
Do we
from
need to
anybody
say
in the
who
public?
it's practical to? Who makes that decision?
It comes back to staff.
Terry, there is somebody coming up to make a comment.
Come on.
I don't want to crowd you out.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I'd like to point out that your new Tier 4 exemption requirements allow for up to two 1.75 gallon per minute shower heads per stall. However, it doesn't make clear in the exemption if both of these shower heads can operate at the same time. So that's a violation of the recently updated California Title 20. So it would help if you would add language to the new exemption that requires that the showerhead diverter valve does not have a shared showerhead position. Otherwise, your water conserving, high usage customers will be taking showers that are 3.5 gallons per minute. And I'd also like to request that you do more to help customers that are always using less than the Tier 1 maximum. On my latest water bill, right here, I'm being charged $33 for water and $77 in fees. So, I'd just like to say that I've always been in Tier 1 for the past 30 years as a customer, and I hope maybe you can do something about that. And also, I do agree with encouraging gray water. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Eric.
That's good. Got you stuff here.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I,
I'm sorry.
Point of clarification.
Yes, Director Bragman, are you limiting it to laundry to landscape on the gray water usage? Was that the motion, from my
that
understanding?
was my thought, because I think it's the simplest thing to do, so,
Okay, thank you.
okay? Thanks a lot.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. We're on item number 4, review PG&E's 2019 Public Safety Program shut-off events for MMWD and respond to mitigate impacts of the next shut-off.
Jack, I'll be making that presentation. So I'll be talking about what happened last year, and then also talk about what we'll be doing going forward to prepare for 2020 and also the years to come. So in 2019, PG&E conducted about 8 PSPS events, impacting about 2 million of their customers throughout California, and 2 of the events hit us here at the district. The first one began on October 9th. PG&E shut off power to almost 10,000 of their customers in Mill Valley, Sausalito, and Fairfax. We were impacted as well. We had 23 pump stations and 36 storage tanks get impacted. Total of 59 facilities, and power came back on about 2 days later. So we were out of power between 40 and 63 hours. But that was just the warm-up. So the big one came on October 26th for us, when PG&E shut off power essentially to all their customers in Marin County. And all of our facilities were without power, including all of our pump stations, all of our storage tanks, our treatment plants, this building, across the street, our water quality lab, Sky Oaks, everything was without power. And that outage ranged from 43 hours to 116 hours. So I'm going to talk mostly about that event because it was the longest. If you flip to the graph titled Second Event, October 26th, what we did there is we wanted to see kind of the impact on water production. So for the 5 days prior to October 27th, the average 5-day water production was almost 29 million gallons per day. And then completely without power, it dropped in half to about 13.7 MGD that day.
Why do you think that was?
Well, they couldn't run their irrigation system. And I think they were also hearing the message that we said to conserve during this event.
Because, I mean, the water's there, right? You can still use it.
Right. The water's there. I mean, everybody, essentially 99.99% of our customers had water. So they could use it. It was available for them, but they didn't, which we were grateful for.
Where I live, we're at the bottom of the hill. So water wasn't the issue, but sewage pump stations were.
Yes.
Because it just piles up and piles up and piles up, and then what it's going to...
Right. They didn't have a generator to pump it out. Yeah. So we estimate the cost for us to respond to this was about $800,000, mostly in generator costs.
Does that include fuel, too?
Yeah, fuel was, we estimated $60,000. There were other opportunity costs. We told contractors not to work because we all had to be responding to the EOC event.
We had some challenge, as I understand it, in getting some fuel. Did that cost more? Or?
Well, we were able to keep the fuel up, but when we called for it, one of our vendors said, I've got a lot of demands. I don't know when I can get to you. So that was one of the lessons learned, to have backup generator or fuel contracts. But we were eventually able to
Okay.
fill up all of our storage tanks.
Was the price increased though as a result? Or?
We didn't gouge. We didn't. We had generators running here in Marin
Yeah.
for clients, and we didn't find any gouging. I mean, it's more expensive because of what they're doing, but it's not.
Yeah.
They didn't go like it's $2 a gallon more.
Right. Right. Okay.
At least we didn't feel
We
that.
didn't run into that.
No.
I don't know. Did you? No, there was no gas.
We found a very good supplier, by the way, in the East Bay. Short notice, we were running 50 kWs, and we're actually running pumps, but they're up to 50 kW. And they kicked right in, and no big deal, they said, no problem, we'll be there. You tell us when you want them. Well, because that was a real concern,
Yeah.
and this keeping generators, I mean, short term like this is one thing. Every 100 hours you have to do oil change.
Yeah.
Start to do things like that where now it gets to be a real challenge if it goes longer.
The good news is our customers were kept in service. And so I want to just talk a little bit about that. Why was that? It didn't happen like that everywhere. So one of the things is early on, we took PG&E's warning seriously. When they said, we're going to do this, we started acting. And so we assembled our internal EOC team, and we began holding coordination meetings. And one of the first things we did was come to you and request approval for generators. So the board gave us approval to rent a generator for the San Geronimo treatment plant in March, and then in May for a fleet of 24 towable generators. And so we pre-deployed those generators, and by August 1st, we were ready to go with our backup power. And so when that October event came, we were ready to provide that power. We also did a lot of public outreach. So before the event, we notified our customers about the potential for a PSPS in our on the waterfront newsletter. We also posted fact sheets on our website and on social media, and we were coordinating with other public information officers throughout the county and also with other water agencies. And then during the event, we issued news releases in English and Spanish, and we provided consistent and frequent social media posts on Nextdoor, Facebook, Twitter. We published an op-ed in the Marin IJ, and then we continued collaborating on a consistent message with other PIOs in Marin County and other water agencies. So this is where I'm at now, if you're following along on your slides.
Yeah.
The real key was our employees. I mean, they really stepped up during this event, not only planning it, coming up with the plan to backfill PG&E's power, but also deploying the generators. We had to make sure the generators could connect to our pump stations, and that sometimes required some talented electrical work. And then, of course, during the event, responding. Some of them had their own issues. Some were evacuated for their homes, but still responded to the call to come in and help. And so, they really stepped up. And many of them are right here in this room, up here on the dais. Pretty much everybody participated in the EOC. Don Wick and Eric Goldman, our safety manager, and then numerous people out in the field who really stepped up to keep our customers in service.
And were you involved in the messaging on this, Jeannie?
A little bit.
Yes, she was very involved.
Yeah, I'm being facetious.
Yeah.
So now I want to talk about what we learned from this event, unless you have any questions about how we responded.
No, I don't have any questions. Other people may, but I did want to say that the congratulations that are due to our entire staff as a result of this is quite clear. I mean, it was just all the way from the anticipation to the steps taken. It was a monumental performance with great success.
Yes, it was. And it was really driven by the fact that you guys got ahead of the curve.
Exactly.
Because I remember at one point, there were no generators west of the Mississippi available.
Yeah.
They were all booked. And I had a few water districts approach me on, can you give us a hand, And I told them, I'm sure we would if you're in a jam, and we probably could come up with a generator. But, that by jumping ahead of that thing, you really made a difference.
Yeah.
And that helped us to configure the pump station so that when the generators pulled up, we could connect, because it's not just a plug and play kind of thing.
Yeah.
You've got to make sure they
Yeah.
work.
And it's a great message, obviously, as you have been doing, to get out, it's a story to tell.
So we did learn a lot. One of the things we learned, this really wasn't, I mean, in terms of disasters, it wasn't a monumental event. There could be much worse.
Oh, yeah.
So it was great experience for us, but it also illustrated where the gaps are. And so there's definitely a lot of work for us to do. One of the things we did is the team put together a list of issues, opportunities, and challenges of 80 items that we need to take care of. And some are easy to do near term, and some are going to take more investigation or more long term. So I'm not going to go through all 80, but I'm going to give you a couple highlights. So if you want to turn your page to near term actions, so things that we can take care of in the near term, some of the actions we want to take are to order chalk blocks for the generators. Some of the locations are hilly, and so we're going to do that. So when we put out the generators for the next event, they will stay in place.
That's just kind of an example of a little thing,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
in the middle of something like this, and you
can't let go of it, yeah.
You can't let go, and all of a sudden, what's staff doing? So it really is. Issues are big and small, but in the heat of it, they all do add up and matter. So a really nice effort by staff pulling together this list, knowing that, as we all know, these are going to continue for some time.
Along those lines, if you look at people like AT&T, they chalk all vehicles. So every truck, flat ground, they chalk it. It might be something to think about from a safety standpoint for us, is just put chalks on the vehicles so that if you look at the back of PG&E trucks, there's,
have two.
where the chalks go in, there's a metal rack where they drop into. And it's basically only the water districts that I've seen that don't do the chalking. All the other utilities chalk automatically.
Yeah, that's a
And
good point.
it's just a good habit to get into.
There's a few others, installing no parking signs so that when we pull up, we have a place to park our generator and also our vehicles as they're bringing them up. Little vegetation management at the pump stations. And also, we want to establish backup fuel delivery contracts. So now our EOC, if you're turning to the near-term actions EOC, that's a picture of our EOC on the right there, and it's actually our yard training room across the street. And we converted into an EOC during an event. So we found out, the conference phone kind of intermittently worked. The projector was a little wonky, and then the computers are outdated. So we need to update the computers so that the different stations have an active computer. We actually, Eric and I got a tour of East Bay Mud's EOC, and some excellent ideas that we'll be implementing, I think, based on what we saw over there. It's very functional. You can see the furniture there is it's not functional. It takes a lot to move it around. We basically have to rearrange the entire room, which wasn't an issue, but for more events like this, we want to make it really functional for us. We also want to develop a call-out system for our employees. There's ways that we can call them out so that we know they got the message and they can message us back that I'm coming in or I can't make it. Call somebody else, that are very sophisticated. And so we're in the process of developing that kind of communication system for our customers.
And that's an example of items that we learn that are going to be critical for a big emergency. Now, this isn't big, but a natural disaster sort of emergency as well. In the middle of the night, instead of our distribution operator that's going to have plenty of response activity, an automated system that's going through the dialer and you can respond that, yeah, you received it and that sort of stuff. Seems like a small issue, but it is all about getting the people in that you need to respond to the event.
So just to cover a couple longer term, I'm now on the admin building long term. We didn't have power in this building. We have a 20 kW generator for this building. That's enough to run the server room and a couple offices. So no lights, no HVAC, no workstations. In fact, over in the customer service area, they didn't have workstations, and so we had to relocate a couple of them across the street because we did have power to some offices over there. And Crystal came up with this plan of let's put them, at these 2 workstations. They can continue to answer the phone, which worked out. Eventually, we got power to the workstations there by running extension cords from the generator all through the office building. There were cords going everywhere.
All OSHA approved.
Yeah, it was, people just said, did whatever they could to keep some workstations working. And so we want to upgrade the emergency power to this building. We want to be able to keep it running. We want it functional, no HVAC. You've got a building full of people. We were open, which we had one customer who came in just to say, "Are you still open?" And yeah, we're open for business. Okay. And then he walked away. He was just checking on us. So we stayed in business and we answered customers' calls and were able to continue helping people throughout this event.
So were the power problems because of insufficient power or just old-fashioned wiring?
Well, insufficient power, but also the way this building is wired, the emergency power that it connects to only runs to certain parts of the building. So we're looking at tapping into it, to the feed coming in and just putting a big generator out there to run the whole building.
Have you given thought to one of those Tesla walls? Because we got the solar, all you need is the batteries, and it gives you an alternative to that. I don't know how long they'll hold up. These are really good, and I want to add my congratulations on, too, as Jack said, to the work that was done. I'm afraid, though, that I smell a little bit of this is a short-term problem. I don't think it is. I think this is something that PG&E, if PG&E goes forward with what they're planning, which what I understand is they're going to be able to not have to transmit the power in, but generate the power locally. They're looking at something like 20 small turbine systems to generate power here in Marin at substations.
Black start sort of things, but they wouldn't be.
But
They'd be natural gas.
they're natural gas, yeah, and that's going to take them 5 years to build that kind of stuff. So one of the things that seems to me, and I'm cool with where we are, but I think we should start thinking about purchasing some of this equipment because I don't think this is a short-term problem.
No.
I think, your thoughts here are good, but I think we should look at a Tesla wall because you got the solar, and maybe with a Tesla wall and a 20 kW, maybe that's enough. I don't know. Tesla walls aren't cheap. They're like $1 million, but
That's a bit. I don't know what size wall that is.
I don't either. But I know they're not peanuts.
Well, we're getting 3 at our house, but it would be 21K if we were buying them at market rate. But there's currently we're getting basically 3 walls for 14,000. I don't know what.
But they come as big as this building.
Oh, okay.
There's really big Tesla wall systems. So I think that's something we should look at because we got their $3 million worth of solar sitting up there, which is going to generate, except at night, all the time, huh? So it generates the power when we need the power. I don't know what happened to it. Why weren't we able to use it when the power went off?
No solar systems produce power during the power outages. Generally, they have auto shutoffs for emergency service workers. Otherwise,
They shut it off so it doesn't go back in the grid. But you
But just break the switch.
Yeah, and I think you can get another switch which would divert the solar to your Tesla.
Well, you're going to have to, if you're going to put in a real generator here, you're going to have a disconnect that takes you off of PG&E. Yeah. So that's going to happen, huh?
And that does happen with the Tesla batteries. You just have a switch.
And it goes, battery takes it out of the grid, so it redirects it to your storage.
That's a good idea. We can look at it. I also did want to note that, in fact, recently talking to Paul, we are looking at what number of generators should we increase our own stock by.
Sure.
Because this did point out, in addition to this is ongoing, and you got to look at, do you want to rent it every year and that kind of thing. In terms of an emergency that's not planned, like the PSPS, do we have sufficient number of generators to respond? And the answer is we'd be prudent to go ahead and have some additional ones, and we are moving forward with that.
Well, that would cover you for earthquakes too, then.
Yeah.
Right,
exactly. That are unplanned, right, where you don't have the benefit of go get a contract in place, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and the problem you get into, which is obvious, is that, let's say that these only occur in the fall. And then in between the fall, you let go of the generators and they say, well, that's fine, but you ain't getting them back. Can't guarantee we can deliver 24 generators here unless you keep them. So you get caught in this catch-22 of you can't move forward, you can't move back. So you need to be, I think, it seems to me we're looking at a 5 to 10 year problem here, if not longer. I think PG&E is going to continue to do this no matter who owns PG&E. It's just a decision that's been made. They might change it. We went for a lot of years without it.
Yeah.
But I think they're kind of so burnt, their fingers are so burnt by these problems and the damaged claims that they're just going to knee-jerk react. And we should start thinking about capitalizing these things because, one thing we might be able to do, and I don't know what the diesel regs are on these engines, whether, I know that was the problem we've had in the past about the Cat 4 and all that stuff, whether they meet the new air standards. But we should start thinking about purchasing some of these away from the vendor and see if they're interested. If they're not interested, that's fine. Just buy them someplace else. But my guess is, my experience has been they're pretty good about this. It's like, okay, they're not going to give them to you cheap. But in fact, I just hit a guy that I forgot he owes me a quote. He's 2 months behind on his quote on a generator for a client here, and I rasted him. But that's kind of the problem of buying. He buys all of his equipment from one vendor. We buy them used, but he buys them all from a supplier who then sells at like 10,000 hours. He says we're done with them, and off we go.
So we are going to be bringing some contracts to the board for the rental generators. As we bring those items, we'll be sharing what number of generators we are looking at procuring this year in the longer-term plan.
For rental.
Didn't the
No.
The contract
For
we're
purchase.
bringing is for rental, but we'll be updating the board on the plans that we're looking at for purchasing.
Didn't the CPUC just come out with a ruling limiting their PSPS? I thought I caught a headline in the last 30 days.
They're finalizing their rules of the implementation of the PSPS. And there's a number of factors in there. One thing of relevance for us specifically is with advocacy of the industry, we continue to be, and it's clear, a public safety partner. There's some term like that.
Right.
That in the industry, Aqua and others are pushing for greater clarity on what that means and how they will inform us in specific ways in terms of the events and priorities for re-energizing and that kind of stuff. I'm not aware in limitations. I think it may be dealing with certain classes of customers, perhaps hospitals and that kind of thing.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's just something to look into.
Right.
And the other thing is, have any of the industry people asked CPUC about getting some kind of compensation? It seems like it's a structural problem that's sort of being passed on down to the local utilities.
Yeah. Discussions in the industry, some agencies, larger, so have a larger cost that they've employed, but proportionally it's similar. And have looked into that in detail and not found a way.
Especially when they're in bankruptcy.
Well, that, but even more so that there's arguably not an inherent right to have power. We have the ability to, for example, not supply water for a determined period of time to do maintenance on our system, right? We don't incur liability. And I think it's a similar, I'm not speaking educated, but I believe that to be the case.
Okay.
So we agree, long-term, this isn't a short-term issue, and the issue about powering facilities is throughout this whole area. Like our water quality lab, they have just a 5,500 watt little Honda generator to run basically the refrigerator and the incubator, but nothing else. I think the idea was, hey, you're only going to be out for about an hour or so, so just keep your samples, on check, but, no lab equipment, no ability to do analysis. It's very limited what we can do.
I have a 10 kW at my house. Electric start 10 kW, just to put it in perspective.
Yeah.
10 kW will keep a house running, no problem, run the whole house.
So we have to upgrade the power to the water quality lab. And then the same thing with the corporation yard. So the corporation yard, we ran the offices and the operations center and the field supervisor's trailer. We had about 8 generators out there running all kinds of different pieces of equipment. And so we want to get away from that and have just one generator, one piece of equipment that can run the whole thing. Okay. And then also, we're looking to install solar panels. We did provide some solar panels at some of our communications facilities. Before the event, we want to continue doing that. Specifically, you and I were talking about Smith Saddle. We want to put a solar panel out there, and also Hawthorne Hills, so that we can continue to see the information about tank levels and flow at those facilities, even during an event.
Well, and you know, these are not so much power demand that a UPS couldn't address most of this. I mean, you can get pretty big UPSs, you know.
With the solar panel?
Well, you don't need the solar panel, you just need the UPS. You want to keep it running, you just plug it into the UPS and
So we were doing that, and we had folks doing battery runs
Right.
and that kind of stuff.
Right, we have battery backup, and that's the problem. The batteries only last.
but that depends on the size of the UPS. That's my point is. You know, UPSs come really big, okay? Like the size of this table that would keep that kind of system running continuously for days, if not weeks. So it just cost. And, you know, we got a lightning strike up in Calistoga and it took out the UPS. And I was surprised at the range of UPSs available. I mean, they come pretty big. And, you know, it's instantaneous, right? The power goes off, UPS is there. And the computer kind of shakes a little bit, but it hangs in. You know, it's a short enough changeover. So something to think about. You might want to beef up the UPSs.
And then, so I'm at the long-term for the EOC. So we want to improve, long-term, we want to improve the functionality of that room. We want to be able to set up workstations. We also want to update our emergency response plan. And then we
Yep.
need to do a lot of training for our staff about emergency operations. And then finally, the EOC is actually housed in our warehouse. So if you look at the photo of the long-term EOC, there's an exterior shot of the EOC on the bottom right. And that's within the warehouse, which is a 1964 precast concrete tilt-up building. So
It's an escape room, is that what?
it looks like it, right? Anyway, we need to look at that because those didn't do too well in the 71 San Fernando earthquake.
Yeah.
And so, you know, long-term, is that the right place for the EOC? Is there something we can do to keep it there, or does it need to go somewhere else? So we
Of course,
need
the
to-
other side of that, Mike, is that this Marin survived Loma Prieta without too much
Yeah,
issue.
that's
You know,
true.
Because of the bedrock here,
Yep.
it's different. You know, the impacts weren't so great.
Yeah,
But, you know, I'm all for it.
yeah.
And it could fold into long-term discussions of upgrading this facility, where we would have, you know, a facility we have confidence in meeting current seismic codes that would have large conference rooms that would be designed to immediately convert into an EOC. Because the one thing you have to have is resources, and you need a place to mobilize. And, you know, it's just absolutely critical, so.
Well, as we talked, you know, people like PG&E and the phone company have remote EOCs that aren't at the facility. They have a duplicate system 5 miles away or 3 miles away where they can run the whole system from without, you know, if this place burned to the ground, doesn't affect them at all.
Yeah.
We have that from our computer systems.
Right, SCADA can do that.
The SunGuard, that kind of thing,
Yeah,
everything's.
3 different locations we can run our
Right,
SCADA
so we have
system.
that, but in terms of the people.
whole thing.
And where to go and
Yeah.
that sort of stuff, but it's a good point.
Yeah.
Well, I guess it's on the dock meeting, but you're going to talk about the generator for the dock, the 2 megawatt. I mean, again, that one seems to me we should be starting to think about buying that guy. I know you're designing it, right?
Right, yeah. We're
So,
designing it so
are
we'll
we
have a
getting there?
permanent. Yes, the plan is for a permanent generator in 2021.
Okay.
At the
At
utility
San
yard?
Geronimo, yeah,
Oh,
the
I
treatment
see.
plant.
So this should be the last year we have to rent?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about Bontempi?
That has power, yeah.
It has a generator, a sufficient generator.
So next step for us to continue working on the 80 items on our after action list.
Yeah.
We want to continue communicating with PG&E. As Ben was saying, making sure that we have the elevated status that water agencies have under the CPUC. We're going to be running and deploying generators for San Geronimo and also the mobile generators that we'll be using at our pump stations. And we want to start earlier this year. We want those in place we're targeting June 1. And then we'll be starting up our EOC coordination meetings because we know it's going to be another summer like last year.
Well, thanks to everybody,
Yeah.
you know, everybody on the staff here.
Yeah.
And also, it seems like it really is a great opportunity just on an annual basis, be prepared for emergencies, right? Quakes and such.
Okay, a future meeting schedule and agenda items.
I did want to call out a couple items on item 5. One, as I had mentioned a couple times to the board, those that have availability and interest, I would recommend, if you've never been, they're twice a year, attending a Aqua conference. Is composed of, it has to be at least 50% board members, and the agenda is tailored for the audience. And it creates an interesting awareness of the issues we're dealing with, and you get case studies how others are dealing with very similar issues in different ways, creative ways, that we all benefit from. So I'd encourage the board. This one is in Monterey, May 5th through 8th. It's not really the whole time period. The richness is in kind of the middle couple days, Wednesday, Thursday. So if you are interested, let me know, and we'll have staff kind of facilitate the arrangements for you. And, you know, whether it's this one, the next one, I'll keep when they come up. I'll just remind the board, and with a similar encouragement. I also wanted to note we're looking to have, around the same time we did last year, a board annual retreat. And we have 2 tentative dates, so when you have time, if you can check your calendar and let me know if either or both of those dates work for you, I'd appreciate it, and we can begin to nail that down. And, I mean, we still have time, but calendars get busy, and a whole day takes, you know, some coordination. And then I'll be talking with the board about possible approaches for that meeting, and to ensure we're maximizing the return on the investment of spending a day together once a year.
So do we have tentative dates yet? Or
Yeah, I'm sorry. So in the bottom of item 5, it's
Fifth and
June
sixth.
Oh, I
5th
see. Okay.
and June
Okay.
26th.
Sorry, I missed that.
Yeah.
They're both Fridays.
Okay.
Okay, with that,
Good night.
meeting.